Hey Kyle, good to see you.
Yeah, Tom, you too. I gotta drop you a line because I've been invited to teach some courses at law schools, and I gotta find out what you're doing.
Happy to give any advice I can.
Nice, man. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm in a hotel, so that's why it's a little weird.
Oh, I can see are you in the lobby or are you in your room?
Yeah,
Okay, I see the
yeah,
high
my
back chair.
AirPods on. Yeah, we're on like the third failback right now. Yeah.
Awesome. So I think people have now started coming in, and we are now 6 minutes into our time. So let's start. So thank you everyone. Thank you everyone for joining us today for this session on the embracing change management in generative AI. And we understand how rapidly AI reshapes industries, and legal sector is at the moment at the crossroads. We can see how many things AI related are happening within our sector. And the question is, should we embrace it as it always has been since AI has been introduced? Should we embrace it? Should we resist it? And today, we'll explore how legal professionals can navigate AI adoption and overcome resistance and drive meaningful transformation. And very honored to have Thomas G. Martin, a thought leader in intersection of law and technology with us. Tom is the CEO and founder of LawDroid. Among some of many things, I think you'll give a little bit of more of a detailed introduction about yourself, but a very deep background in generative AI, speaker, professor, author, philosopher, coder, everything in one package. So let's start this session, Tom, and please start with a brief introduction or a detailed introduction of who you are and what you do and your background.
Well, thank you so much for that generous introduction, Alex. I'm really honored to be here. I think what you and Valentine do in terms of the Future Law Conference is really amazing, brings together a lot of great people, and I'm looking forward to it this May. And I hope all of you are too. Um, the company that I founded is called LawDroid, and we've been working on AI and intelligent agents for 8 years now. It started off, no code, conditional logic, old-fashioned AI, but now it's been catching up with everyone else. And so there's a lot to think about there. And, also as a professor teaching students about generative AI and the delivery of legal services, um, the issues about change management are at the forefront. There's a lot of issues that law students are concerned about. There's a lot of issues that obviously lawyers and law firms are concerned about. And so I'm hoping that today's presentation will be helpful to understand some of the major issues. And so it's going to be fairly quick. I'm going to run through the slides and give you an introduction to it. And then Alex and I will get to talk a little bit with some follow-up questions. So it's kind of like presentation and the fireside chat combined. And one thing is just a heads up, I am at a hotel. So it's going to be on my phone and I'm switching to the presentation, but it'll just take a second for me to share my screen with you and then get that started. So just give me a minute. Alex, just let me know when you can see the screen.
I can see the screen, and
Okay,
it's
great. So
loading
let me just
something.
switch. Yeah, just let me switch over to Canva.
Perfect.
All right, so oops, let me just put that in presentation mode. There we go. How does that look?
Great. Looks perfect.
Perfect. All right, so let's get started. Revolution or resistance? Good question, right? So we're going to talk about these 5 things: understanding the impact of generative AI, psychology, change management framework, which is very helpful. I borrowed it, by the way, from Andrew Ng. He's a wonderful uh, thought leader in himself, and he talks a lot about AI, and he has a framework for he calls it the AI transformation playbook, which I borrowed from. Then some case studies, best practices, and then actionable steps for leaders. So in terms of understanding generative AI and its impact, I think a lot of you may have seen these figures already, but just to recap, in 2023, the usage amongst lawyers was 19%. That's all different kinds of the frequency of usage put together in the 2023 Clio Legal Trends report. They found that that trend increased by 60% in 2024. So it jumped from 19% to 79% usage amongst legal professionals. And so it's not everybody voraciously using it every day, but there's a spectrum of usage. But still, to jump 60% within 1 year is pretty amazing. I'd like to see what those figures are now in 2025. A benchmark that's maybe a little more helpful is for in-house counsel and law firms from Wolters Kluwer. That's a frequency of at least once per week, right? And so those figures, 86, 76%, they speak for themselves. And it's affecting all types of tasks, everything from legal research. Just recently with Sonnet 3.7, I tried a research, an analysis prompt that I'd asked before about Thomson Reuters versus Ross and analyzing that new copyright infringement case for fair use defenses. It handed me back a legal memo that I would be happy to sign my name to, and it did so in about 20 seconds. It's really ridiculous, the change that's happening. You could also use it for contract drafting. In fact, Robin AI just announced they've upgraded to 3.7. Strategic thinking, so not only to do the thing, but to help you think about the thing before you do it. Using AI as a second mind, a la Ethan Mollick, right? It can help you to think through an idea before you implement it, and certainly faster turnarounds. So all of this is impacting the billable hour. According to Thomson Reuters 2024 report, 43% of law professionals expect the billable hour to decline in usage. And certainly it's under pressure from all this efficiency. How can you be more efficient and use the same amount of hours? Well, maybe use the hours for different things. Maybe you can explore more legal theories. You can investigate more. You can still use time in additional ways to go deeper into a case that you couldn't previously do. And naturally, clients are not blind to what's going on. They know that AI exists and makes us more efficient, and they're demanding efficiency and cost certainty. Alternative fees are one way of addressing this pressure. Flat fees is one way. Traditionally, it's been applied to very simple legal services like drafting a will or incorporating a business. But the interesting thing is that with AI, services that used to be more complex are actually made easier, right? Because they can be done more quickly and efficiently using AI. So it may be that services that were once complex can be simplified to actually make flat fee pricing not only appropriate, but profitable. Then you can have subscription, recurring revenue, fantastic thing to have. I think one way to do that is you actually dig deeper into the business of your clients and engage on a proactive side, not just a reactive litigation side, but proactively within the contracts that they're making, risk assessment in real time. And then value-based pricing is where we can actually value the work based on what we deliver to our clients in the outcome versus just our time. And so I think that's really useful, especially when something doesn't take much time, but it communicates a lot of value. That would be the way to price it. And there's other opportunities becoming available. Co-developing AI tools, offering AI-driven solutions, working with tech vendors to create solutions together. And we'll look at that in a second. But the first thing about, just going back for a second here, about the psychology of change is reframing. So reframing is when we take something that might be viewed as a negative and essentially view it as positive. Let's look at some of the stats. How do we feel about AI generally? 72% of us feel that AI can be a force for good. So that's on our side. But 96% feel it can go too far, just like Tesla's autopilot. It isn't really ready for prime time, and we need to be careful, especially within legal, in terms of using generative AI. And we all have this fear, in the pit of our stomach. Will AI replace lawyers? It's something you hear constantly for the past few years. So that's the negative frame. How do we reframe that? Well, AI, one way to view it is as a force multiplier, right? It's not going to substitute for us. It's going to enhance what we do. And here's some stats to back it up. You could save 4 hours per week per lawyer, but actually increase the billable hours because you could focus on higher value work. 75% of billable tasks have, in Clio's assessment can be automatable, which means you could take on a higher volume of work and dig deeper into the client's process and actually end up making more money. So the force multiplier is, I think, a better frame. Or looking at it like Iron Man, right? Iron Man is amazing because he's a smart guy, but also because he has this armor, this suit that empowers him to go above and beyond what he could do on his own. So it's another way to think of AI is as a force multiplier, as an Iron Man suit that can make you do more than you could on your own. Self-efficacy is another psychological term that it actually reflects an individual's belief in themselves, that they have the self-confidence to actually undertake tasks, succeed in doing them, and it helps them to take on that new frame, that new habit. And so some ways to influence a sense of self-efficacy are mastery experiences where you actually do things, get them done right and succeed. Observing others succeed through their effort, encouraging people, making them feel good about the work that they're doing. And then finally, that you're just in a good place when you're doing this, both psychologically and health-wise. So to make this more concrete, like what is a framework that we can use to do this? Well, the first step to overcoming, skepticism, and again, this is me borrowing from Andrew Ng, but the first is to run pilot projects. In fact, this is something that I did with a major law firm where we created an NDA document automation. And so it was a bot that asked some questions, very simply drafted a non-disclosure agreement, which is something that often happens and is a demand from clients from this major international law firm. And there's not high value in them doing that and spending their time putting those together. So it was small, it was discreet, it was an easy win. People all across leadership can see it, and that it actually bears fruit. That instills confidence. Number two, if your firm can afford it, to create a dedicated AI team, because it is very important to have an accountable team that takes ownership of this so that they can see it through. Giving, kind of dispersing the accountability and responsibility through different people that aren't really in a dedicated team, it just doesn't work. Number three, you want to follow it up with practical AI training, not just demos, not just whiz bang, like this is cool, but actually working it into like one specific task that you have and teaching people how that works. Because when they see it with their own eyes, kind of like Doubting Thomas, when they see it, they can believe it. Number four is that you want to develop a coherent AI strategy that aligns with business needs, not use cases. And don't get me started with use cases. I think I'm going to mention that later, because it needs to serve a purpose for your business, including a law firm as a business. It has to align with either client satisfaction or operational efficiency or other things that are important. And finally, communicating is very important to fostering trust and transparency. When you communicate openly about your experience using AI, the good and the bad, you can move forward and learn from it. So some case studies where change management has succeeded this is one where Esther Chiang, who worked at a white shoe firm, she went out, she launched Smart ESQ, and the kind of value proposition that she's offering by basically changing the way that law firms approach certain services, like this one is forming a $1 billion private equity fund. Typically would take 2,000 hours, typically would cost $2 million. But using AI and automation, she was able to scale that down, saving 80% of, what time would be spent, trimming it down 400 hours, saving 75% and offering it for $500,000. Now, for her burgeoning business, that's a good price tag. For a large law firm, it's not. So this is a case study to show that, share some motivation for wanting to do this internally. Don't get beaten to the punch by a startup doing this. For example, over at Wilson Sonsini, they did it internally, right? They developed Neuron with David Wang, who at the time was the chief innovation officer there. It's a fixed fee AI powered contract drafting and review service. And so they use that to speedily review and analyze contracts, but they have a lawyer in the loop to give that imprimatur of accountability, fiduciary responsibility. And that's ultimately what people look to us for, is that peace of mind that comes with not only knowing that a lawyer and professionals looked at it, but that we stand behind it, right? And we stand behind it monetarily because we have malpractice and we're held accountable, if things go wrong. And so this solution resulted in a 92% accuracy rate when it identified issues with a lawyer in the loop. And so some strategies for success are training staff, keeping current on ethics because those rules are constantly changing, updating your fee structure if it's appropriate. Like, does it make sense to do the flat fee or does it make sense to do value-based pricing? Maybe one of those fits. Maybe when you add AI to the mix, you can offer those kinds of services for that type of price. Transparency with clients. I'm a big believer in that, regardless of jurisdictional requirements on ethics, that it makes sense to just be transparent with your clients, communicate to them what you're doing, how you're providing services. They might even be very impressed, with the efficiency and also the cost savings. So some actionable steps. First off, just begin with the end in mind. Do not jump into AI because everyone's doing it. Do not just start with a use case that a vendor pitches to you. It's easy. It seems like an easy win, but it's not. The way to do it is you begin with what is something that's taking too much time? What is something that you can reduce time on, but increase value on? What's your measure of success? Start with that and work backwards, right? You want to do something that's important to your business or law firm. So you don't want to look at use cases. Use cases are hypothetical. Use cases focus on the how, not the why. Why you do it is critically important to you and your bottom line. And that's what a business need is. So I like focusing on business needs and addressing those because that ties into what's going to create dollar value for you. And also the easy way, start small, focus on something discrete. You want to land and then expand. So get that initial win, that initial success. And then once you have that, you have something that you could work with within your team and convincing leadership that this is the way to go and to spend more time and effort and money on it. And so that's it. It's a quick overview of change management, but you got to understand that generative AI is here to stay. It's making a step change in the practice of law, the psychology of dealing with people's natural reaction to AI and how to reframe it, right? And also to use it to your advantage and through self-efficacy, get people confident about using it so that they continue to work with you within the change management framework of taking the steps necessary to change your organization over to a new way of doing business, which is what is going to happen. It's happening now. And then some case studies just to show you that it does work. It can be profitable. And then finally, those steps to focus on. So with that, I'll end my presentation. I'm looking forward to talking to Alex more about this.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Tom. We can't see you still. Your camera is off. Oh, there you are. There you are. Great, great. Thank you so much for the presentation. And let me double check whether anyone in the chat has left any questions. Not yet. Then I will start. From the audience, if anyone does have any questions or you want to ask them live, please prepare them. But meanwhile, I will ask Tom some questions from from my side. And I think the first question would be, with the adoption of AI accelerating in the in any industry, but specifically in the legal
Yeah.
industry, what do you see is the biggest misconception about how AI will impact legal professionals?
Well, the biggest misconception I think is what I pointed out. Like too many lawyers were worried about it just taking over their jobs. And I think when you're reactive and you work from a place of fear, and that place of fear, sometimes it doesn't come across like that. It might come across as just denying, denying the efficacy of AI. Like, I really can't do what I do, or it can't really help on this. If anybody feels that way that's watching, and probably not because you're all pretty, tech progressive that are watching, but for anyone that in your organization that's feeling that way, I think if you show
Yeah.
them just one good example of how it could blow your socks off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess then the next question of to follow up on this would be, how can law firms, especially, fear of something new is completely normal. So it's understandable. Like whilst people get used to it, or an industry such as the legal industry that is quite outdated in many ways, hasn't, or not outdated, but hasn't changed in many ways. How can law firms and professionals reframe AI as a force multiplier rather than a threat? How can they do this?
I think it really is by starting small. And I think a lot of firms and lawyers right now are making the mistake of starting large. Like they're just jumping into bed with a vendor that is, representing that we're the end all be all. You just, plug us in, and then you're into the future. You're going to be able to handle everything. And it's not a knock on the product. It may be an awesome product. Like, not picking any fights, but Harvey, for example, is amazing. It has, workflow solutions. It has document automation. Like it has so much that it could do. But the issue really is in the lawyers and law firms knowing how to use it for something that's important to them, right? And so to get everyone's mind around that, especially the people that are skeptical about it, you have to start with some very particular step that you could see immediate value from. And so, like, for example, the work that I did, I can't mention the name, but this larger law firm, it was with a non-disclosure agreement. Now, for them, that was, it's not setting the world on fire, but they do get a lot of requests for that. And that's proven by the fact that, one NDA came out with their own overall solution to that. There's been a lot of solutions to NDAs because it's a very discrete problem. But once you solve that, and you solve it in a way that works for your law firm because you have specific needs of what's going to be in an NDA, and it's customized to you, right? So it fits all your needs and your client's needs, then you could scale that, without having to bother even an associate attorney. You can have your client essentially self-help in testing that. And so that like small measurable win can prove even to the most skeptical person, oh, this actually works. It's doing something. If I could do it like that for something small, then everyone starts to imagine what else it could do.
Awesome. Definitely. I can see how with many industries, including the legal industry, the AI is, it can help because of how much automation can come from AI, how much stuff you don't need to do yourself. It can really help you focus on things that do matter to scale your business, grow your business, focus on the customer, like create a better customer client relationship, with you. So there's a lot of things that come with that. Then so my next question would be, in the presentation,
Mhm.
you highlighted starting, sorry, if I'm remembering correctly, the importance of like small projects to overcome this
Right,
skepticism, right? Uh,
right.
so can you share any like a few examples of like how small AI implementation led to wider adoption within firms?
Sure. I mean, there was the one I mentioned about the
Yeah,
NDA that really
yeah.
helped that firm to get on board. Um, Actually, let me give you an example that's not legal. That might be interesting because Andrew Ng, who I mentioned I borrowed from with his AI transformation playbook, he used to work at Google, right? And he one of the things that he did when he started there was he worked on Google Translation. And so for Google, this gigantic enterprise, like working on Google Translation to improve it was a small thing in the ocean of Google. But he selected to work on that with his team because he felt that if we can work on this task and improve it, then we can actually change the mind of a lot of teams within Google that were actually quite skeptical that his approach with machine learning could have a deep effect. And this was many years ago, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I think we all remember when Google Translate went from being, it's all right, but it seems pretty mechanical in the way it can translate until there was a change in how they actually use machine learning to approach that problem. And then almost overnight, it became much more fluent. And Andrew was a part of that. And he focused on that as his first problem, which was a smaller problem at Google to get people on board. And once people were able to see the actual effect, which you could see pretty immediately with the translation, right? You just look at
Hmm.
it and you can see if it's a good one or not, if you understand the other language. And with that, he was able to get a lot of people on board. And so for every organization, and this is the other thing, everyone is different. There's no one size fits all approach. For one law firm, it might be an NDA. For another law firm, it could be, as my friend Troy Doucette, he's created AI.law, and he's helped to use AI to make it easy and fast to put discovery responses together. So when you get a request from opposing counsel, give me all these documents, answer all these questions, his AI is fine-tuned to solve for that problem. It takes your client information and it makes it easier to spin up a response. And I know from my personal experience that early on, I was working for a litigation firm, and my boss at the time had 5 paralegals churning through discovery responses for him. And with this kind of technology, he may have only needed 1 or 2. That's the kind of scale and kind of impact that you can make. And maybe you could take on more cases. Maybe you could make more money winning, more cases than you could take on previously. So it's a win-win. It's not just limiting your growth.
Awesome. Thank you. So for law firms looking to integrate AI, I think I think you've kind of covered this a little bit, but what are the first steps? Like someone who hasn't even touched it, right? Maybe they only touch ChatGPT, right? That's the only thing that a lot of people still believe AI is ChatGPT or something that draws pictures for you. So what are the first steps that a leader of a law firm should take for a smooth transition?
So I think for people, including myself, have talked a lot about experimentation, like jump into it, experiment with it, try it out. And I think that's useful a lot of times for people that are like us, that are watching, that are early adopters, right? But not everyone is like us.
Yeah.
Other people are on a different spectrum of skepticism or ease with technology. And so I don't think that recommendation, hey, just jump into it, experiment, is going to work for everyone. And so I think those that are watching, those that are tech progressive, you actually need to be the champion of this. You need to present it in a way that's easily digestible for people that otherwise wouldn't be open to AI. You don't want to just have them experiment with ChatGPT, because what's going to happen is the experience that I've outlined many times. People use a naive prompt. They don't give the proper context. They don't make it clear what they're asking for. Then, garbage in, garbage out. They get a really terrible response, a terrible average response. And then they've proven it, right? They've proven the self-fulfilling prophecy that it's crap, and they want to move on. And then it's harder to convince them because they think that they've proven it to themselves. So actually what we really need are champions. It could either be a vendor that consults and provides advice. It could be one of you that goes to your firm, but focus on something really small but measurable in terms of value, because that's how you're going to get those people on board. And then they could experiment with that.
For sure. I mean, yeah. Are there any other risks really, really early on in the adoption process that people should be aware of? Well, as in like law firms should be aware of, or legal professionals.
Yeah, definitely. This brings up another issue, which is build versus buy, right? And so the reason why I mentioned that is because the main issues, obviously, security, privacy, reliability, those are the main issues. But how we deal with those main issues changes based upon how we're approaching the solution. And so the solution, I mentioned build versus buy because it could be that we use a vendor that provides a legal AI solution. The advantage of a vendor is they've dealt with many, many customers, many, many clients, and they've had to think through all these issues themselves. And they wouldn't be in business unless they're handling these issues in a professional, responsible way, right? They'll be out of business. The problem with build is that when each organization builds their own solution thinking, okay, we're going to have complete top-down control, this is great, they're also building it for the first time themselves. Everyone's creating their own wheel, or they're constructing their own car. And if everyone were constructing their own car, we'd not only have accidents on the road, but cars would be falling apart. So you want to go to a car dealer and buy something that's put together well. And so these issues about privacy, security, reliability, they become a bit riskier actually when you build it yourself, because you're dealing with it for the first time and you're not sharing best practices.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I do have some questions in the chat, and the first question is that I see is from Marianne Gebauer. Hi, Tom. Who would you suggest? Sorry?
I think it's Marlene, right?
Oh, sorry. I didn't see. It's very small. Marlene, sorry. I thought it was an I. Marlene, sorry. Marlene Gebauer. Who would you suggest be a part of the accountable team in a small, medium, and large law firm for best success? Often there's a dedicated innovation team devoted to these efforts, but who else besides stakeholders should be boots on the ground? What is the difference in different sized firms?
Yeah, so obviously my response is going to be different for different sized firms, but let me just speak more in the abstract. Like you want to have stakeholders. You want to have people that are actually using this stuff. So it could be a secretary, administrative assistant. It could be a paralegal. It's not always going to be the lawyers, right? You want to look at legal professionals broadly, but the people that are actually using it, because they're going to give you the most honest feedback, right? It's not going to be about, hey, this is cool. Hey, this is AI. This is fun. It's going to be, is this actually helping me do my job? And you want to give them, provide a safe environment where they could say like, look, this really isn't helping me. This might be interesting to you because it's AI, but for me, it's actually not making my job easier. It's making it more difficult. And you want to be open to that because there are certainly grooves within which these solutions can help. And you want to focus on those, right? Not the ones where it adds friction. So the actual end users, I would say, are probably the most important.
Awesome. The next question is from Martina Vol. And any advice for small firms which are not ready, not really digital yet?
Yeah. Well, for you, it's just going to be, a leap. You're going to leapfrog into this without maybe without some of the bad habits that some firms that are intermediate right now, um, that they have. Uh, you just jump straight into like how these AI tools directly can help you. It actually, the question makes me think of some countries in Africa where like phone systems that we have in Europe and North America, the copper lines and all that, that infrastructure wasn't necessarily built out to the same degree within some countries in Africa. But the leapfrog there was they went directly to mobile phones, right? They went directly to cellular connections and smartphones. And that's been a good thing. They've learned directly how to use those things and be mobile native. In the same way, a firm that maybe hasn't jumped into this yet can be AI native by just learning how to use these things to help you without the baggage or worrying about how it integrates with everything else.
Cool. One more question from Aline, and the question is actually very interesting. Any specific examples of how clients are driving the change management?
Yeah. Well, I could give you one from like a different area. So LawDroid, we work with private enterprise and law firms and lawyers, but we also work with legal aid. It's been part of our mission since founding 8 years ago to help empower justice everywhere. And so in working with legal aid, that's been directly with the people that actually ask questions where they need self-help legal information. And I remember early on, this was like 6 years ago, almost, I think, we set up a table at a Department of Human Services, which is people that don't have a lot, they need some government assistance. They go to these offices to get assistance from the government. And they were the people that would be asking questions that would need legal help on these basic, things like housing and, healthcare and stuff like that. And we set up a table. We had some Kroger cards, which is a supermarket in the South. And we encouraged them to like sit down with a laptop, play around with the chatbot and tell us what you really think. And so we, got the immediate feedback from real people that would be using it, not sophisticated attorneys, but real people asking real questions. And that's how you do it. You just go to the source. And the feedback we got was invaluable, by the way. Like one comment I still remember, because we saved all of the comments and feedback we got. One of them was, I actually prefer talking to your chatbot because I don't feel judged. Right. And so, yeah, a lot of those human factors are extremely important.
Interesting. I would have thought people would prefer to talk to a real person. I would have never expected that this would be one of the situations where people actually prefer bots.
Yeah, sometimes.
Interesting. So, some feedback from Martina. She is saying, "Thank you, and yes, Germany feels sometimes like a developing country. RE, all things digital." Next question is again from Marlene. Are firms experiencing AI overload, and how is that coupled with the normally long sales cycle impacting change management efforts in firms?
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah, Marlene, that's a great question. I mean, I've had a lot of conversations within the past year where it's basically a firm hitting me up for a demo. They don't know what they're going to do with it, right? So that danger that I mentioned in my presentation and in our conversation, they're in the middle of that danger zone because they don't know what they're going to use it for. They don't know like why they're talking to me or any of the other vendors. I'm just one vendor on a list of maybe a couple of dozen that they have to talk to and see demos. And the problem is they're going to come out of that and they're going to be even more confused. They're not going to know what to do, what the first step is. They're probably, what's going to happen is the very last vendor that talks to them, they'll sign up with them just because of that, primacy, finality effect of who you talk to and who, what impression it has. But what they really needed to do is what I've talked about. You need to focus on a very first pilot project that will create immediate value for you, that you can use to understand the technology better, and then make it work for you and convince leadership that it's a win.
Awesome. Thank you so much. There are no more questions in the chat. Maybe someone would like to ask a question live. All you have to do is unmute yourself and say hello.
Hey, Tom, I've been thinking about this a little bit in the context of change management.
Yeah.
In the early days, 2023, one of the lead-offs that we would do in trainings, and I think it continues on now, is start with the fundamentals of generative AI. And I feel like taking that approach, especially with lawyers right off the bat, actually starts to lose the audience. And I think for change management purposes, dovetailing off of what you said earlier, the way to do it is to hit them with a use case right away. I'm thinking back to like if we were in the 1920s and we were seeing a car for the first time, would we really care how the internal combustion engine
Right.
works? Or do we even know now? Do lawyers even know now how the internal combustion engine works? Or do we see this thing, this horseless carriage, move us much more quickly from one place to another? And is that the way to really to capture hearts and minds, is to roll out a really strong use case that connects with the lawyer, the legal professional on the other end, and then eventually get into how this works and how to mitigate against hallucinations and that sort of thing. So love to hear your thoughts on that.
100%, Kyle. I totally agree with that approach. I think that a particular obstacle that we run into with lawyers in our legal mindset as lawyers. And by the way, for others listening, I've been a lawyer for 26 years, so I have a lot of experience practicing law too, not just the tech stuff. But I think one particular character flaw trait that we have is that we love definitions, right? And focusing on that and being really like critical of like this versus that. Is this actually artificial intelligence? Is this Gen AI? And they get caught up in that. And you're right. I think that the educational element sometimes could play negatively into that because there's too many details. It's like too much to wade through. And because it's new stuff, it becomes even more confusing. And so I wholeheartedly agree that the first step is just you find that, and I have a problem with the use case, find that business need that dovetails with value for your organization and solve that, crack that nut. And then you see like there's that real value you're extracting from it. So like, yeah, I think that's the way to go. That's the way to convince hearts and minds.
One second. There is one more question in the chat from Enam or Inam. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Speaking of value in general, I would be curious what you think is the most valuable data inside a law firm, worth extracting, tracking, databasing, etc.
Wow. Deep question, man. What do I think is most valuable? Well, I am kind of answering on the spot. One thing that's I think extremely valuable is attorney work product. Just all of those like files that you've accumulated over the years. They're there for a reason. It's not just a document. It's a document that reflects hundreds, if not thousands, of choices and very different contexts, right? It could be a contract, it could be a pleading on a motion, opposition to a motion. And each of those things is, in a way, an archive of your institutional knowledge, of the lawyers that have practiced at that firm, of the ones that have retired. They can't really offer any consultation anymore. It's it is reflected though in those documents and they're thinking that they put down to paper. And so I think in a way, if what's great about generative AI is that you can extract from free form information, from unstructured information, things that are structured, So in a way, we could use all of that attorney work product, not just to create other documents that are similar, that make similar arguments, but what about also the idea of extracting all of that knowledge and wisdom and making that available to apply on different, for different business needs, and also to make it available to younger associates that are coming into their career and help them with training with some of the best minds and thoughts that you've had within your firm. So I think the work product is the most valuable.
Amazing. Thank you so much. If there are any more questions, please do unmute yourself and say hello. And I'll give a few seconds to our audience to get the courage to ask you one more question. We have a little bit of time. There are no more questions in the chat.
Okay.
But if not, then yes, you can. Oh, what was it? We love you, Tom, from K.
Oh, thank you.
You will be able to see Tom speak at Future Law 2025 in May 29th, 30th in Tallinn, Estonia, at the international conference that we're holding, and where Tom will be talking about legal operations in the age of LLMs as a part of a panel. So please do consider joining us. It's going to be a fun event. Our third. How many have we done? Valentin, how many have we done now? Is it fourth? I'm losing track. It's growing every year.
It will be the third one.
Third. It will be the third one, yes.
Yeah.
So
Right.
if anyone does want to venture out to the edge of Europe, to Estonia, a beautiful country, please do visit us.
You mind if I give a little plug for that?
Sure.
Yeah. So I know Estonia, it might, for my North American friends that are watching, like, it might seem a bit far off, but I really enjoyed it. I had never been before last year when I was a moderator for one of the panels of Future Law. But the amount of talent, including people from North America as well, were there, and amazing minds from the Nordic countries, from Estonia, from many European countries, and also like people that were representing, amazing karaoke, that's true. But people from Asia, from the Middle East, like international representation. And I think from that's something we don't see as often back in the States. And so getting that experience, seeing Tallinn, learning a lot about Estonia and how tech progressive it is. For those that don't know, it's just like amazing digital economy. And then, Helsinki is just a ferry ride across if you want to go visit. So I highly recommend it. Valentin and Alex are great. So check it out if you have a chance in May.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you, Thomas.
For those who don't know, yes, Estonia, although it's like a country that's not really on the map on the global scale, it's tiny. We're 1.3 million people, but we have been like in the top for startups per capita in the world, for unicorns per capita in the world. A pretty crazy statistic for a country 1.3 million people that was basically part of the USSR, like, not long ago, but Estonia has reinvented itself. If you have used Skype, you've used Estonian tech. If you've used TransferWise or Wise or Bolt when you spread to Africa, so that's still Estonian tech. Pipedrive, wow, we have too many.
Pipedrive, yeah.
So, yeah, Pipedrive for sure. Yeah. And a lot of people don't know, like, blockchain seems like something new and very vague and a gray area for a lot of people. But our government has been using the blockchain for, I don't know how many years now, since 2014, I believe, to 2000, around then, for database and record keeping. So, yeah, pretty a progressive country in terms of tech.
Our e-governance system actually is built upon blockchain, at least partially. So yes, the practical implementation is quite massive.
Definitely. But yes, that will be. There are no more questions. Just a lot of people being very excited and happy about this talk. Thank you so much, Tom. That was great. I'm looking forward to seeing you in May. It's going to be a great one. I can't wait to get really stressed out a week before, as we always do.
Yeah. Actually, one last thing, just an ask for y'all. Like, if you enjoyed this talk, I actually have a Substack at LawDroidmanifesto.com, LawDroidmanifesto.com, and I publish a lot of articles about this type of thinking and, you know, change management and things like that. So I'd love to have you as a subscriber.
Excellent. Thank you. And yes. Thank you so much. Yes, everyone, please follow Tom's Substack. And thank you, Tom. Thank you, Valentin, for being with me. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. If you are in this Zoom call or if you're watching on LinkedIn or in recording. So great to have you with us. Thank you and have an awesome rest of your day, evening, night, morning. It's 1 a.m. for me, so I'm going to go to sleep.
Have a good night.
Right. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.